Have you ever wanted to build a home lab and have it be brand new stuff that you can trust, but felt that that budget would be well too outside of your capabilities? Join Dom and I as we talk about the home lab we built for under $1,000 to do an awesome boot camp with. The main thing is you got to understand the architecture. Give me the ball.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about today home lab shenanigans that you should check out. But before we do that, we are 3 weeks away from Security Boot Camp. It's in Atlanta, which is great. It's by far the most kinetic boot camp Pax8 has to offer, which is also great. And I believe there's a little bit of space left, so you should get into it and come join us in Atlanta. Uh, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that jazz. And let's jump right into the show.
Yeah, good call out, Dom, on like the boot camp coming up. That's the whole reason we built this lab. That's the reason we're having this show to talk
Yeah.
about it. And maybe there's something we reference in this show that might be a flag. So hopefully you're watching this later and trying to solve a CTF challenge at our boot camp. But if not, then it's not relevant to you. Anyways, so we had to build this lab, and Dom, like, I've always had a lab. I'll say big shout out to like Tom Lawrence at Lawrence Information Systems. He's been on the show, but Tom has like empowered hundreds of thousands of people to build their own home labs. But like for me, when I was hiring people and people would ask me like, what kind of certs are you looking for? What degrees are you looking for? What are the I want to know you've actually enjoyed and been passionate about this and done it. Talk to me about your lab. Talk to me about that cool thing you built or that one thing you failed to build or had struggles with or whatever it might be. And I think kinesthetic learners and people that learn with their hands should definitely have a home lab. What about you, man? Like, have you always had a lab too? I know you're kind of a FAFO kind of guy. So,
In some form or fashion, like my lab is very cloudy today, right? I have some stuff in Azure,
sure, same.
to get through developer credits and some things in DO. Um, uh, I have a accidental network lab because I've let my home network get a little bit too like complicated. There's a lot of VLANs, too many VLANs. And I'm
Accidental home
similar,
network
right?
lab.
Yeah, and as a hiring manager, I don't care what college you went to. In fact, I don't even read that part of your resume. I just don't care, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably going to piss someone off who watches this, but I'm more interested in like what is your tactile experience, and if you haven't done this professionally, what have you done to learn on your own, right? And
Are
I
you
do find in the
curious?
resume,
Did you try? Yeah, exactly.
well, and then I see your custom email domain, and I go straight to security trails and see what you have, right? And it's is that a
Yep, same.
Microsoft team, or is that a, what else do you have on there, right? And I
Yeah.
learn a lot about you and your technical background before I even talk to you.
It's true. That's funny because I would get giddy. I'm like, "Ooh, he's using Cloudflare tunnels. Oh, that's cool. Look at that."
Yeah.
Like, or she's using Cloudflare tunnels, right? Either way. But I think it comes down to making it cheap enough to be able to do this. Now, the way I did it in my early days was I would literally take home the old server. Like I remember plugging in the
Oh,
6
sure.
power supplies necessary for my Power Edge right server that had spinning
One for
platter
the Android.
5400s. Yeah, like horrible. I could run 4 VMs. I had 16 gigs of RAM and it cost me like nothing, but it was like more power than I would ever expected. Like I had a heater for the basement. The other challenge is like the sound of it all. Running
Yeah.
servers and running stuff in your environment, like your house isn't made to deal with that, and it's kind of annoying. So,
God forbid it
I'll start
rebooted
with
at 2 in the morning and those Dell fans spun up. God,
ooh, right, I forgot about that. The kickdown fans, the
right?
73,000 RPM, right? Sound like a jet engine. Man, I'm glad we went through this nostalgic rollback. So let me first start with a picture of the lab we're talking about you building here. Let's go ahead and kick to that for me. Yeah, this is the lab that we're talking about here. No, I'm totally just messing with you. Dom and I just went and pulled like our home data center off Reddit and pulled a picture for this. Um, Dom, we're not talking about this, are we? What are we talking about encouraging people to build with their $1,000?
Yeah, it's not this. Although, like, if you get a rack and that's cool, right, Matt? You use a rack in your own network. It's a very
I
small
have a couple of
wall-mounted
them.
rack.
Yep.
It's great for organization. But no, we're talking about like a mini lab, right? And in this case, we built a lab that's going to go in a suitcase and on an airplane to get to where we're taking it. Um,
Yep.
and we built it out of some really cool stuff. But I think the point of this is it doesn't matter what hardware. The biggest thing to keep in mind is We're not building production resilient infrastructure. This is something for you to toy around with, build, destroy, break, screw up, right? So long as you're not dropping it, it'll last you a while.
That's right.
And this
That
is what
reminds
we
me, I
found.
still have a snapshot running. I forgot I still have a snapshot running of all this infrastructure I need to deal with. I digress. Side tangent. Yeah. But look at these stats, right? So we bought two B-Link. I think these are the SER8s that we actually ended up buying. I don't think this is the SER8, but basically it was an AMD Ryzen 7, 8 core, 16 hyper threaded cores, right? 4.7 gigahertz on the big cores, and then 32 gigs of RAM of DDR5 RAM with 1 terabyte of NVMe SSD drive in it, and a pretty decent little graphics card to run on. So we bought two of these, Dom, and to your point, they're not really production. They have a single drive in them. They don't have two. Now you can upgrade these devices for about $59 for like the absolute best King spec
King's neck.
SSD. King spec, the finest here. But you could
Yeah.
buy another NVMe and make that your clone. The hardware RAID or software RAID that goes on it can be passed as a driver to Microsoft Windows or to Proxmox and other things. So essentially, what we have here is a base host that has 32 gigs of RAM. We have two of them. So that means we have 64 gigs of RAM minus overhead that we can assign to virtual machines on these hosts, right? And
Right.
I think that's the other piece is like for anybody that's a super novice, which I assume you aren't, we're taking advantage of virtualization. And I didn't think I'd be saying those words in 2025. So if I am ELI5ing something you understand, I apologize. But Dom, what's virtualization? What do we do with virtualization?
I mean, virtualization takes essentially the concept of a whole computer or server and puts it on another computer, like right. So it's virtual. It is essentially running as software, and we're kind of allocating hardware on the hypervisor to that machine. So that machine, as far as it's concerned, is a computer with 4 gigs of RAM and
Yep.
a virtual Intel processor, whatever you gave it, right? A virtual NIC, and it runs a full operating system.
Yep. And so there's different types of those hypervisors. There's type 1 and type 2, basically dealing with whether or not it has direct access to the hardware or whether it's running in itself another abstracted layer, right? We can get into containers and kind of all kinds of other stuff, but let's just focus on type 1 hypervisors running on a core of a physical operating or physical machine running an operating system that is only meant to be a hypervisor. That's what we're talking about here. And so we bought two of these to be our hypervisors, but I still got to get them talking to each other. We still got to make sure that they can communicate. And so we then added this $49 Flex Mini 2.5 gig switch. It's amazing. It's extremely low wattage. You can run it off USB-C that comes with it, or you can run it off PoE if you already have another infrastructural switch that provides power over Ethernet. And I don't even think it needs AF power. I think it'll do it with AT, the lower end, or whatever the two of those that are the lower end of those power methodologies. But 2.5 gigabit between hosts. Now, virtual machines sharing certain types of virtual NICs already have a much higher speed backplane because they're happening on the host
Yeah.
between virtual machines. But when you have two hosts and machines that are on host A and machine that's on host B, they need to talk. They're going to be limited to whatever your network throughput is. And so this little cheap 2.5 gigabit switch is amazing for that. And yes, those ports on the SAR8s are 2.5 gigabit, so they do take advantage of the switch's throughput. So yeah, so this $50, so we're at 450, 460, let's say, times two plus another 50 gets us under that $1,000 between connection. Add in a couple of monoprice connection cables if you don't already have them laying around, which I hope you do. You can get this lab built up for under $1,000 with two hosts, 64 gigs of RAM, 16 cores times two if you hyperthread. Hyperthreading can be another deep topic to get into. But I usually, Dom, I don't know what your rule is. I wouldn't assign over 75% of the hyper-threaded cores in a non-high use environment. But this isn't production. If it isn't perfect performance, you could have a lot of stuff running if you wanted to and make these things
Yeah,
super
you're right.
dense. And we
Yeah,
did. So we
yeah.
have
I
switch
try
and
not
two
to limit
hosts.
things. I love trying to keep as close to like 95% RAM as I can get because I paid for the memory. I'm
Same.
using the memory. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, memory's different. CPU cores, the problem with hyperthreading is you can get into collision because you're really taking one core and having it do a few things. And so if you over a certain percentage, you can have some challenges there from performance. And I'm not the expert. In fact, I will reference back to Tom again. Tom does home lab stuff where he gets really in the weeds about these things. So Tom Lawrence to show
You
the
know, he
great.
has one of
But
those
let's
home
show.
labs that almost the first picture, except his is pretty and well done. So to
True,
be
and
fair,
3D
so
printed and beautiful and always
yeah.
rotating because people send him stuff, which is pretty dope. But this is our set of hosts. On the top, you see that Flex 2.5. Below that, you see Proxmox 01, Proxmox 02. Dom, what's Proxmox, and are you shocked by that number on the left of how many watts we're pulling on this thing? Because that is inclusive of the firewall, the two hosts, and the switch is 38 watts on this.
Oh, I'm super shocked by that number of watts. That's super cheap to run, right? I mean, imagine just at one point just running a gigabit switch would have cost you 38 watts, right?
For sure.
Um, so I think this is super efficient, and I think at the point you grabbed this, we had already deployed a few VMs. There's a couple Windows VMs and some others like a Unify controller running on there.
Oh yeah.
Those are busy machines. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And that was at full load. The only thing different is if you notice down on the watch card, we didn't have the lights on for Wi-Fi, hadn't turned on the Wi-Fi antennas. Those only added a few watts. They really didn't add a lot more wattage, even with 7 or 8 clients on it. So it's really wattage wise. What's nice about this is wattage equals how much it costs me per X to run, right? This number of watts, and it gets into kiloamp hours and or kilowatt hours, and then that's where we actually pay. But the lower that number, the less of my kilowatt hours I'm using, therefore the cheaper it is. And if you think about a random power supply on a workstation, those are 400 to 800 watts in full performance and consumption. Running a small Bitcoin miner is like 500 to 1500 watts. I mean, a heater is 1500 watts. We're pulling 38 1500s, like 3.8 150. It's like 3% of a heater. This is nothing
right.
on your power bill. I don't know if y'all laugh at my math there, but I'm good with it. um, so what do we do with these? In the past, Dom, like I started mine. Here's where I really started was Zen hypervisor, Zen server, their free edition. So like that's throwing back. And then it was VMware ESXi, which was, the free platform of VMware. And then it was into, Microsoft Hyper-V, but then you had licensing costs and maybe that was part of your Action Pack subscription or maybe it wasn't. So what I'm running now is Proxmox, and Proxmox is a paid service you can buy. Right, you can buy and pay for a full Proxmox enterprise license. If you look at the pricing on it, Proxmox does have products that you can buy, Proxmox Virtual Environment pricing that speaks towards the community editions as well as the premium edition. 1060 a CPU socket. I had two of them. I need 2,120. That isn't that bad for a full blown either.
Not
But
for
remember, these
one
aren't
either.
production environments. Even if you wanted the community, that's really just community plus a community support.
I
But you
mean,
can
remember,
use go.
remember VMware? I mean, that it'd be cost you about 1.5 million or something like that at Broadcom. So
Yeah.
it's
Now
a
it's
good
what
deal,
35,000 per core. No, I tease, but it's
something like.
ridiculous. But if you wanted to run this yourself, I don't want people to get trapped into believing they have to pay the 115 in annual support for that. You actually can just download Proxmox from their site. This actual Proxmox VE 9.0 installer or 8.4. I would probably say if you're starting now, I'd just start with 9. The 8.4 to 9 was a
Yeah,
fine conversion for me. I did an 8.4 to 9 upgrade and I only ran into a couple issues, which we'll show here in a second with my Claude query that I had to do for that one because I was like, what is happening here, boys? But you download the ISO, you put it on a flash drive with something, depending on what you end up using, Rufus, or in Mac, you'd use one of the Mac tools. And then you just boot up the VM or the host and you install it like you would a regular computer. That's it. Once you get installed, however, when you sign into your Proxmox host the first time, you will get a notice that says, hey, you're not on a licensed host. And I'll try to see if I can share that with you real quick. Let me go to proxmox02.4tengineering.com. Have fun trying to get there, y'all. It doesn't work that way. So even though these might seem like they're internet exposed, they are not. Dom, I don't know if you want to speak to that while I'm signing in.
that's the great. You know, these are behind Cloudflare tunnels, which give you the ability to essentially put a zero trust policy in front of something that's exposed to the internet, which is great. Right, you can go there right now. You're going to get asked for a different authentication before you get this far.
Yeah, you will not get this far. You will sign in and put in your email address. It won't match my rules unless I've screwed up. So let me know if I screwed up. But entities should not be able to get that far. So we're greeted with no valid subscription. So you do not have a valid subscription for this server. Please go here to get a list of available options. There's something you actually do need to do when you get this, because initially when you get this out of the box, it's expecting and is pointing at enterprise endpoints for update for your apt-get update process. In this case, we had to go and change where apt pointed so that you can actually get that to actually still update and do your updates on the host. In this case, Dom and I aren't updating the hosts. I'll leave that for you to figure out potentially if there's any vulnerability there. And these are the actual hosts we're going to be using in the boot camp. This is Proxmox 02. Proxmox 02, if you look down here, you have these virtual machines, right? If we go down this left side, you see Proxmox 02. That's the host name that I'm on. I didn't put these together in a bundle or in a server cluster. I just made them separate so I don't have any control plane crossover or anything at all. There's some reasoning for that, but they are separate. Down the left, you'll see you have your local and local LVM. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong screen. Look at me. Okay, I'm good. I swear. I didn't get baited into that. Local on the left side. So this is where your virtual machines are stored, or your local LVM is where your virtual machines are stored. This is created on the same physical disk partition, right? So when you install Proxmox, in this case, it has your local and local LVM. LVM is where your virtual machine is going to go. Local is where things like ISOs and disk images go, things that you have, CT templates, if you want to have a Debian 12 template for a container.
This is created on
That's where these go.
right.
So the other piece is obviously your local network. And in this case, one of the things that's nice is per virtual machine, I am able to pass different, oh, I clicked on the wrong thing, but I am able to pass different VLANs, right? So the reason I went with that network switch with Unify is I can set up a lot of different virtual LANs, VLANs, and then I can say, oh, you, Mr. Machine, you're going to be running on this virtual LAN right here, right? So I can go in and say, oh, you're on VLAN 1 here instead of on VLAN 2 or 11 or 10 or whatever it might be, right? Your numbers may change. You also notice that I'm running this Cloudflare tunnel. That's actually being done in a CT container. So think like Docker or other container type mechanisms that are not traditional full blown disk based virtual machines, but instead are these container based machines that have a base disk they build off of as a template. What else? Like that's pretty much it. Each of these hosts has a single NIC into the switch. In fact, we could probably showcase that because I could go to unify.14engineering.com and sign in. Again, you're not seeing this because I've already Cloudflare authenticated. And let's make it root. And then I'm not going to say the password out loud. But it is crackable. For the boot camp coming up, you might be able to brute force that password. All passwords are crackable over time. That's fair, with other conditions notwithstanding. But so in this case, I can set up the ports on this switch. And if you'll notice, see how this blue color shows 2.5 gigabit Ethernet? So that is those two hosts are connected on the 2.5, and then the connection off to the upload is only a gigabit to the firewall, right? So I have 2 gig between the hosts and an upload there. But the way I've tagged those is like I can tag the VLANs that I want, what I want the native VLAN to be on those. That's the reason I'm using the Unify switch. It just makes it really easy, where I can make an untagged native VLAN 1 on one of the hosts and then native VLAN 16 on the other host, just for my own laziness, actually. But yeah, so that's essentially the switch and the hosts. Really, it's just about like go build yourself a lab. The neat thing about it, if you've not done any virtualization at all, is you can come to this one control plane and have access to all the virtual machines. You saw me double click before and then walk away, but I can now go on this virtual machine and sign in. Yes, you are looking at a server 2012 screen. I did that on purpose.
Maybe another hint.
Yeah. It might be another hint potentially. Navigation wise, just so I can point this out, no VNC client you may have used before, but you have your mouse, essentially your keys, right? You have your full screen button to make this thing go full screen. I love that you hit full screen, Mr. Producer, right as I said full screen, like delicious. And then the settings, but the ones you want to pay attention to is your Control Alt Delete is not well said what it is until you hover over it, but that's your Control Alt Delete to get it to where we could sign in as administrator. Okay. And now I can sign into and look at this lab and this environment, right? I can see the DHCP. So I can administer these servers from this front end. And I know so many of you have used virtualization, so please don't take this as me speaking down to you, just making sure it's covered. The other thing about it is when you get in a bind a bit, I will say this is where like generative AI is actually really good at these types of problems as you're going through your lab experience. So for example, I upgraded to 9 and I said, hey, help me fix this. And I just raw copied the error in right into this. I guess I've just given you my IP or an IP that I've used. But remove or comment these repo files. Like, hey, let's get rid of these sources list from the enterprise space. Oh, let's add the free sub, the no subscription repos. If you want to go back to this link, this is really what I got it to do is this echo. I'm echoing, so I'm writing this in dev HTTP and putting that information in the file into my etc app sources list. That's my source for apt for apt for updating on Linux, right? So then I can do an apt update, and then I can do an apt upgrade, right? So if you ever get into a bind with
You haven't
Proxmox, it's a
noticed.
lab. Go.
Well, yeah, and it's a lab, and if you haven't noticed, these are Debian, right? So Proxmox, I
Yes.
think, is built on top of Debian, so it's just Linux. There's also like you could do a lot of learning on the host itself. Just know that it's if you go too far, you're highly likely to just burn everything down, which should be okay in a lab. Don't put important production stuff in a lab, please.
Don't put important production stuff in a lab. Use a lab for lab stuff. If it goes bad, you sweep
Yes.
it into the trash can and build it again. Um, the other thing that's really neat is you can get into using like CI/CD pipelines by using a host like this, like a build up a GitLab host. We've done that. We've built a GitLab.4t engineering com. You could actually have this GitLab, and it's configured this way now, use the Proxmox host. So I have GitLab running in one of the Proxmox hosts, and it uses the other host to do automated deployments, right? To do Terraform or other types of capabilities to build up your infrastructure as you need it. I'm gonna have it build my LXC containers that I need for this boot camp automatically using controlled CI/CD. I had never had a need to be in a CI/CD pipeline in that way. I had never had to experience that. But for trying to build what I'm trying to build, I had to do that, right? So I had to
One
build
thing we've
up a
learned
GitLab.
in this process is GitLab is very heavy and hungry. So if you need a lighter
Mm-hmm.
weight, Git
God bless.
GITEA is another good Git server you can
Agreed.
use, and a lot
Yeah.
less
What do we have to
resources.
give GitLab? I think I robbed it resources and gave it only 4 gigs of RAM, but it's going to require 8 of that before I'm
Yeah,
done. It is more hungry than the RDS server. This
yeah,
RDS server it has 8
indeed.
gigs of RAM. It's used nothing versus this GitLab. It's like, bro, I'm already caching and paging. I need some more. Yeah, it's certainly paging at this point. But yeah, I'm running on this one host a Unify controller, a DCO1, DCO2, GitLab 01, RDS 01, Node 0 instance for our stuff we're doing. And then on host 02, it'll be hosting the rest of my infrastructure and Dom's infrastructure for Proxmox host 02. Right now, it's just running 4TE network 01 and 410. I just wanted to see how many different words I could make with 4TE, like 4TE RDS01. If you can go down that path, it's so funny if you giggle there. But yeah, so it's like Turd Ferguson. Anyways, um, yeah, so this is really it. I mean, I think other than covering like how to get started, go get the ISO, burn it onto a disk, install it on your new host. You don't even necessarily need both hosts. You could spend 479 on one single host and tie it into your existing network and
You should
learn
only
stuff
start
from
with
it.
one host, right? Like, is
Yeah.
it, my first lab, well, my first lab was like you, it was a recycled server, but my first like thing I bought a host for was another tiny, I don't know, it was some kind of nuke at the time. It was way more expensive at the time too, but um, like I was building two VMs at a time and burning them down and building two different VMs. Like until you really want to build a bigger sort of environment, right? You can start with one host, so don't think you need to start with like a cluster. If you work a lot in
Yeah.
cloud, and you work for a partner or you are a Microsoft partner, you have CDX available to you that will let you spin up tenants and play around with mostly functional tenants. Unfortunately, the dev tenant program is kind of shut down, but there's different ways to get access to cloud environments too.
Yep.
DO you can
That's
run
what
super
Dom
cheap.
mentioned DO earlier. DigitalOcean, Azure, AWS, any of those, they'll often have a cheap credit to get started. But even if not, I think my DO VMs run like $23, $24 a month. So if you look at the math of a lab, a home lab, unless you need the hyper specific and local stuff, you could just spin up and spin down resources in DigitalOcean or in Azure and pay only the per day charge, per month charge, per week charge. The big thing that screws me there is I build something, then I like it, and then I leave it. And then later I look and realize I spent $240 on a VM that I did not need to leave there for an entire freaking year. That didn't have any extra benefit to me, and I eventually deleted anyway. So like I would start with a home lab because you can control the costs to near
Right.
zero. The other thing a home lab gives you is the ability to do things with local LLMs. You might have to go larger and larger graphics card capabilities, but even these with the GPUs and the shared big core, little core stuff they have, they're pretty decent at managing LLM loads. Not huge ones, but lower RAM level LLMs that you might need to run. So I use DigitalOcean too, but typically that demarcation point is I just don't like to put a lot of stuff that's going to live in my house that others are going to connect to, because I like my identity infrastructure to be in place. So you might use something like DigitalOcean to escape that space, but even then you could do stuff to do that. That's like what the Cloudflare tunnels are for me. So I'm pretty much out of it. I mean, I think we've showed.
We don't use Cloudflare. There's actually an open source project called Pangolin, which kind of
Yep.
like is this self-hosted idea of Cloudflare tunnel type things. Same concept with WireGuard all through your network. So there's different, and you can run that on like an $8 VM, right? So there's different ways to
Yeah.
get around. CG NAT's a thing nowadays. So if you're looking to expose
Old
stuff, one,
carrier
make a
grade
DNS
NAT.
first, but use a tunnel to poke a hole. You'll get right through it.
Yeah. Also, quick trick. If you have a Cloudflare account and have any assets in that Cloudflare account, you can use workers and pages for free. Meaning you can
Yeah,
spin up a page, a website, or a worker virtual machine and a database that is literally free, as long as you stay under 100,000 queries per X, right? Or whatever the number is they're using to stay for that. But
which
essentially,
is a
as long
lot.
as you're a low volume usage, like it's nuts. I'm running like 9 web pages on there and I pay $0 for it right now. So don't forget about those type of infrastructures that you can do that are live testing, especially if you're building web pages and things of that nature.
Azure free
Um,
tier, AWS free tier. There's options. You got options.
yep, absolutely. So go explore, go learn, go play around, and if you have the budget, I would encourage you to buy a home lab and make comments down below if you have your thoughts on that. But home labs for the win. All right, I don't have anything else, Dom.
I don't have anything else. Let's move on to the play of the day.
Okay, play of the day. I think I personally wanted to know, have you tried it? Have you played? Have you learned? Have you failed? The definition of expert doesn't mean I know everything. An expert means you've tried more times than a beginner has even, you've failed more times than a beginner's even tried, right? And so when you think about it, is how do you go get those failures? I'd prefer not to do it on production environments or client stuff. I'd prefer to go learn it myself somewhere where I'm going to do 0 damage. And in the worst cases, I have a little egg on my face, wipe it and start again. Right. And so I think the point is that if you don't have a home lab or you don't have access to lab resources, you should go look to build that. You should have those things and you should want to explore, especially if you want to be in the technical modality and be able to use things. The other thing I'll add to it is like, I'll often go test out new stuff because I have the place to do it, a scratch pad that I can destroy it in and put it back together the next way I want it. So go build a home lab. See y'all later.
Game over.
All right, solid play of the day. But yeah, experiment, learn, screw it up, whatever. Just they're not waterproof. Don't drop them in any toilets, but get some cheap hosts, build a lab, and try new things. I think you'll be surprised at how much you learn for just trying to beat through walls. And I think you have it easier, especially if you're new at this or you're younger and you have like Claude and such at your disposal. Because Matt and I had to poke around Stack Overflow and survive condescending replies to how dare we not already be wizards. And you don't have that. So, try Claude to learn new things, fail to learn new things. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place.